Thank you, Deputy. And just before I turn it over to our first speaker today, I just want to recap the VPD and our section are really privileged to respond to the needs of our Muslim Association to facilitate this specialized training so we can all feel safe in our places of worship and be who we are and have sense of belonging in this country. So, and I want to thank all the speakers, including our subject matter experts from the Jewish Federation, and thank you for being here. So without further ado, if I can set up the first presenter.
I'm going to just make a quick introduction. So first of all, good afternoon. I want to say on behalf of the Jewish community and myself personally, how appalled and saddened we are by the recent attacks on Muslims in Canada. There should be absolutely no place in Canada for hatred based on religion, race, skin color, gender, or any other type of racism. We stand with you to bring to justice anyone whose actions in any way threatens any person based on racial hatred. I just needed to get that out of the way for myself and for all of you. It's really important to us as it is to you. We feel terrible of what happened in London, Ontario, and other places.
Thank you.
I'm here today as the chair of the Security Committee of the Jewish Federation of Greater Vancouver to tell you about how we organized and to see if our experience in the Jewish community can help you. In 2015, because of what we saw as an increase in anti-Semitism in Canada, we formed a committee of people who had either an interest or some background in security. Except me, I don't have any of either, but they sort of forced me. We decided that we needed to focus on two things. First, Jewish venues like synagogues, community centers, and organizational offices. And secondly, on major community events. We got some training from the Vancouver Police Department and from some people in our community who have some knowledge on how to be extra eyes and ears at events and at prayer services. But we were completely out of our depth when it came to physical security risk assessment at synagogues and other venues. We decided to get professional risk assessment of one of our buildings, and that assessment, when it was completed, told us how woefully unsecure that building was. In the wake of that experience, we implemented many of the recommendations made by the risk assessment of that building, but we realized that we need to go far beyond that building. We needed someone who could assess all the Jewish venues and get recommendations on all those venues tailor-made for each one. They're all different. We needed someone who could train the volunteers on an ongoing basis, or at least supervise their training. We needed someone who could liaise and work with the police departments so that the police could provide the training and workshops that we felt we needed, and to alert police about our major events, and to focus attention on known violent racists in our province, because there are some. In 2017, we hired Daniel as our community's director of security. You'll hear from him in a moment. His hiring has made a world of difference for our community. He is the focal point for any security-related issue in our community. He knows all the players who are in charge of security at the various organizations, and he even helps organizations access Security Infrastructure Program, or SIP, grants from the federal government. There is a financial cost to having a director of security, but I want to float an idea that our two communities may be able to work on together. As was probably reported by the Prime Minister in the National Summit on Islamophobia that was held last week, the SIP grants have been raised to $6 million, and the government says it wants to learn from affected communities, which specifically includes Muslims and Jews, how the SIP grants could be better used by our communities. At the moment, the SIP grants are available for hardware, for software, for physical upgrades, but mostly not for services, even though specific building risk assessments are eligible. I think that based on our experience, that the cost of a director of security for the Lower Mainland or for the BC Muslim community would be an excellent investment in security for your community and for our country. Whether the position be full-time or part-time, if you think this is a good idea, we could jointly make a submission to the federal government that services such as this position, and in some cases paid security guards, should be eligible for SIP funding. I've also agreed with Daniel, and we've spoken about it before, who has now 4 years of experience with our community, that he could help any new director of security that you might hire to get a jump start on that person's position by sharing Daniel's experience with that person. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel for the rest of our 15 minutes to talk to you about specifics and best practices.
Thank you very much, Bernard. And thank you to everybody. I'm just going to share here. All right. Can we see that? Perfect.
Perfect.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for giving me the opportunity to give you this talk. I understand that I only have about 10 minutes, so it's going to be a little bit high level, but as I explained, I'm happy to come back at another time and talk specifics with you and help you in program development. So as Bernard said, that I've been in this role for almost 4 years now. And prior to that, I come to you via the South African and British militaries, as well as about a decade of international humanitarian and NGO relief programs around North Africa and the Middle East. Well versed in providing support and security support to Muslim communities that are in need of it. So in this role that I have a few main functions that I undertake, and they are as follows. They're on the screen there for you to see. So I coordinate the safety and security training of all the organizations across the Lower Mainland for the Jewish community. I do that in conjunction with the VPD. Sometimes they're assisting with the training, and some of those people that have helped train are going to be speaking tonight. I also do it on my own as needs be, depending on what the training is and how many people and what we can arrange. One of the things that's very important with the training is to ensure that you have a standardization so that you can develop common practices and procedures to ensure that your community members are able to come together and work together as needed. There's no point training different styles and methods at different organizations or mosques or community centers. It has to become a one coordinated training package. With regards to the risk assessments and the upgrades, I take on the role of carrying out those risk assessments. Typically, one of these security companies could charge you anywhere from 10 to 15,000 per risk assessment. It's a comprehensive document and gives you a lot of recommendations for improvement, assesses your vulnerabilities. And what we can do with that is to really to save those costs and actually put them into the program and the upgrades. So as Bernard said, again, with the SIP grant applications, I assist with those. I help work out what needs to be done and where, and I help with the application process and writing the risk assessments and the planning that goes into the SIP grant application. One of the things that I found that was lacking at a lot of organizations was the actual security policies and procedures. So one of the things that a security director should be doing for you is also to either draft them or review the existing ones and tweak them and edit them as needed. They need to ensure that those policies and procedures are kept up to date so that they can reflect the current security threats and the changing needs of your community and those specific organizations. Things change, things evolve. Certain tactics or things that happen, and you need to roll with it. You can't become stagnant with these security policies. With regards to large-scale event planning, during the high holiday period, but also there's other events throughout the year where you have to coordinate with law enforcement, with venue security. If we're having it at UBC, we have RCMP and campus security. If we're having it downtown, it's VPD and the outsourced security. And just making sure that whoever you have plays the main role, the oversight of ensuring that the planning and the coordinating and everything is coming together. You have that one point of contact so that nothing's being overlooked and nothing is being missed. And in developing the good working relationships with local law enforcement agencies, wherever you are in the mainland, whatever police department you are falling under, most of the Jewish organizations that I assist are within the VPD's area. And that's why I have a really good working relationship with a lot of people that are, again, going to be talking to you tonight. And then the other factor is that I would be taking on is the being on call for emergencies and being that incident command when something is happening. Being that person that answers the phone, that is able to then get extra security guards to get to the site to take charge of a situation as needed from the civilian side of things, while the police are able to do their side of life, and then be that liaison and be able to turn police speak into civilian speak as well, and be able to communicate that to the community members and the leaders of those organizations that are experiencing whatever the trouble is that they're going through. The coordinated training that we typically put on covers these topics. And again, I talked about the standardization and developing a common curriculum. And so in conjunction with law enforcement or independently, I carry out these trainings across the community. I don't just hold them at the community center. I go out to different schools, synagogues, community centers all over the Lower Mainland, and I take it to the people in order to get the most amount of buy-in and the most attendance. Because what you don't want is people after work trying to travel in an hour through traffic to try and get to another hour and a half lesson. That's not fair, right? So we go out and we take it to them and several times during the day and the night, depending on what we can fit in and make it work for everybody. So these topics that we cover, we try and get to as wide an audience as possible. Initially, we looked at just doing the frontline staff, the greeters at the places of worship, because they're the ones that are interacting with the public the most on a day-to-day basis. But then we opened it up and we cover the entire community. We opened it up to everyone, parents at schools, attendees at the synagogues. And that gives you, as Bernard said, the term that he used, the eyes and the ears. They're not security guards, but if everyone is paying attention, if everyone is being vigilant, that helps your security posture, that helps your security guards, because you understand the ebb and the flow of life in your communities. You understand the dress, the greetings, what should be done on certain religious days or certain holy days, etc. And you can spot the thing that is not meant to be there. The term we use in the military is the absence of the normal, the presence of the abnormal. And living in that community, you understand what is not right. So, we ensure that the organization staff, as well as their security, they go through all this training. Then they also do drills and rehearsals and practices, which we do in kind of a layered approach. We talk it through first, then we walk it through, and then we actually run drills. And we cover things like, the fire escapes, the first aid locations, the lockdown procedures. And we do this in conjunction with the police. VPD, one of the officers who are going to speak a bit later on, James Hooper, he has helped us in many drills and practices throughout the community. And so it's a really good resource to be able to have. One of the things that I like to do is I like to have a hybrid model, not just trained community volunteers and not just security guards. As I said, the community volunteers have their own benefits to being there. And then the security guards are the licensed professionals that are able to get physical if need be, enact use of force, and do that side of life as they've had training in that. And it separates your staff that are able to alert them and then back off and let them handle their job. And then the upgrades themselves. Now, this is a complementary measure to the actual training. And as I've already said, so I'm just going to skip over this quickly, is that I help work with the organization. We develop a risk assessment. We find out where the vulnerabilities are and what their priorities are based around the need of the organization, the types of events or services that are happening. And then obviously the budget, because the government only pays 50% of the upgrades. And then I help them prioritize what needs to be done, help them find vendors, help them work through the quotes and figure out what is the best option to take on. And then I'm on hand usually to assist with the upgrades. I'm on site to make sure that cameras are going in the right place, access control is being put in the right way, and people are being trained appropriately on the systems that are being installed, etc. So it's a full service type of role that we take on. And as I'm coming to the end of my time here, I just want to wrap up and give you a bit of a preparedness cycle overview. So I just want to highlight this: the continuous nature that a preparedness cycle must take in order to maintain an effective safety and security posture, so that you can't stagnate or be static in what you're doing. It's no good to just put in a couple cameras, put in a gate, and do one training session, and then you're done. This is a continuous cycle. You're evaluating what the risks and threats are. You're seeing what your priorities are. You're bringing in the resources, the police, a security director, other trainers for first aid, stop the bleed, etc. And then you're working on the equipment. You're training people in the equipment or the policies and procedures. You're running those drills. You're checking the rehearsals that you've done and evaluating those results. And then you're adapting again. You're taking those results and you're making the program better the next time. You found a flaw that you hadn't noticed when you did the paperwork exercise. Now you've done it for real and you've identified a new vulnerability, and you work on that and you tweak it and you keep evaluating your results and you keep progressing, and a continuous cycle. It never ends. So that's my time. That's exactly 10 minutes. As we said, we'll do questions later. There is my contact information. So as I said, I am available to talk to you in depth about this further, and about the training packages that I put together, either just myself or in conjunction with the police. And I'm happy to help you work through developing your own security programs.
Thank you, Daniel and Bernard. Thank you very much for your time. As we've spoken before, hate has no boundaries, so I'm really glad that we can all work together to make the community a safer, a better place. Thank you. And
thank you very much.
Laura, any luck on setting up your share screen?
I think Val is going to do the presentation, or yeah, there we go. She's setting up the, so as I said, I'm Laura Dujmovic. I'm with the VPD Cybercrime Unit. I work actually in social media and crime prevention. So a lot of the information that comes to me is from our detectives, who are truly the experts in regards to cybercrime. So next screen, please. Val, thanks. So that's just a breakdown of who we are. Actually, the sergeant is now somebody else, but all the detectives are at the bottom there. And we have a crime analyst who also feeds a lot of the information to me for social media. I do Twitter, some Instagram and Facebook, but we're looking to reach out to do a little more. Next screen, please. So we fall under the general investigation section within the VPD. Our mandate, as you can see, is crime prevention. So that's a little bit on my part: mitigation, disruption, and prosecution. I'm sure everybody has a lot of questions on how successful we are, and I'd be happy to answer any questions after. A lot of the information that we have actually is open source intel. So that's everything that you find on the internet: Facebook, social media, LinkedIn. I'll just give you a quick example. One individual was located after a homicide in Vancouver, and we were able to locate him by his email address that he had on LinkedIn, which was kind of fascinating. And I was there in the office when our detectives were working and triangulating on this fellow who was eventually found in the valley. And they were within 200 meters of where this individual was located, and they were able to do that all via computer, which was quite fascinating. Next screen, please. So this is just an example of, I don't know if any of you have seen it, what happens in 1 internet minute, which is kind of mind-boggling if you look at the number of texts and dating sites, and we've got Snapchats and Netflix and Facebook, and it's just 19 million texts are sent within 1 minute, or were sent within 1 minute last year in 2020, which is it's pretty mind-boggling. But it just gives you a snapshot of the magnitude of what goes on the internet. Next slide, please. So if you keep clicking Val, it just gives us, so yeah, surface web, that's what I would use, like, so Google search engine, social media, all that. And if you keep clicking Val, we've all heard about the dark web. This is everything else that happens on the world of the internet, which, we keep hearing about these data breaches and whatnot, which is scary even for those of us who work within the section, because we all think we're pretty well versed at securing our passwords and whatnot, but so much information is on the web, and no one really, in essence, is secure from crime happening on the net. And I'm not trying to instill fear; it's just the reality, right? If a like, just for instance, medical records, Life Labs was hacked, I think last year, and it's kind of frightening when you think about all the information that's out there, and the vulnerability of all of us. Next screen, please. So yeah, what are cyber crimes? Anything directed at computers or devices, and I've got some examples in a couple slides of that, and I'm sure each and every one of us on this Zoom call have experienced it, whether it's a text with a link, or a phone call from CRA or allegedly CRA. So crimes involving computers or devices, so that can be like cyberbullying, any hate mail, whether it's via text, Facebook, and then of course hacking and online scams, which are huge, just absolutely huge. Next screen, please. So yeah, so phishing is basically the messages that you get, whether it's a work email, a text saying that you've had a compromise with your bank account, click the link. Don't do it. Always confirm with the originating agency is the advice that I have. And again, I'll give you the information at the end. On Twitter, I'm always providing crime prevention tips, and I try to keep them as simplistic as possible, because not all of us are. I'm certainly not that technical in terms of what goes on behind a lot of these online computer scams. So, and then telemarketing, I'm sure we've all had them as well. The CRA scam, if you don't pay this and deposit this Bitcoin at this Bitcoin ATM, we're going to come and arrest you. If you haven't heard of it, it's out there and it's still continuing. So that's a list. Romance scams, pretty obvious. Facebook, they'll create a fake account with some stolen photo that they've found on the internet. At any rate, that's the SIM swap. They'll contact your carrier, try to convince them that they are you, and then in essence, all of your cell phone gets shut down and transported over to the fraudster, and then they have access to everything that's on your phone. So kind of scary. Next slide, please. Val, next slide. Thanks. Thanks. So yeah, that's a couple of examples. Netflix, yeah, we've had an issue with your payment. Please click the link. Don't click any links. I think that's a pretty good advice to just adhere to. Don't click any links via text. I had one actually not long ago, a TD Bank one, and I went into the TD Bank because I had a former account there, and they're like, no, it's just disregard. Next screen, please. Next screen. So that's just yeah, again, look for the web addresses, the website. Often it's just one letter off, or there's spelling mistakes. you have to actually really become hyper vigilant with this stuff. Even when you're dealing with the internet, if it doesn't have the HTTP with the little lock symbol on the corner, you wanna be aware of that. Next screen, please. Hydro was another one that they're targeting, usually small businesses, threatening to shut down the power if they don't pay a certain amount of money. A phone call, your SIN card was used at the border, it's being used in criminal activity. Can you just please give us your SIN number? Whenever somebody asks you for information that they should already have, I would just hang up. I wouldn't even, you can go straight to, government website or Service Canada to confirm if anything is going on with your SIN card. And yeah, bank scams. So next screen, please. So basically what a lot of these fraudsters are working on is these three emotions: hope, fear, altruism. So hope, like, oh, you're the winner of such and such, or fear, if you don't pay this, you will be arrested. Altruism, we've got, even unfortunately during COVID, they have capitalized on that and said, oh, we're sending money to less fortunate countries who are having trouble fighting COVID, or the World Health Organization send money too. So when in doubt, always verify through your Canadian government websites. And I've got a whole bunch of resources at the end. And of course, any questions that anyone has, they can always email me on what legit sites would be and if they're ever concerned about any of them. Next screen, please. Forward, please. Just some pretty basic prevention tips on how to prevent identity theft. Personally, they're saying shredding. I burn a lot. I don't even trust shredding. Mail security. I have a PO box. Unless you have a very secure mailbox at home, it's surprising how many people don't even think that people will go door to door stealing mail, but they do, and anyone within the Vancouver Police knows that. I've got some great websites on how to secure your passwords on computers, and there's checking your credit once a year, always a good idea. You never know if somebody has managed to get a hold of your identity. Checking your credit score through Equifax and TransUnion at least once a year is always a good idea, because you'd be surprised. Some people actually have had some real shocking, just all of their information has been changed, their mailing address, everything, their past employment history. It's quite shocking. Next slide, please. Just some crime prevention tips on updating your computers, backing up in case of, in the event of like a company, if they have ransomware sent and they're saying unless you pay set amount of money, we are taking all of your information. Some people pay it, some companies pay it, some individuals pay it. Other people say, forget it, go ahead. And they just restore from their latest backup, and therefore they don't lose any information. And then of course they work the bug out. Yeah, so safeguard biographical, geographical information. Next screen, please. I'm just not going to go over every single point. So these are some of the internet sites that are fantastic. Get Cyber Safe. There's Canadian Anti-Fraud. There's all sorts of information, and we do a lot of information sharing as well. So if a new trend comes up within the VPD, we obviously let Canadian Anti-Fraud know and Get Cyber Safe. So we're all working on the same wavelength and trying to prevent crime across Canada, because sometimes they'll try something in BC and then it'll surface in Ontario or vice versa. And next screen. This has been really fast and I'm sorry, but there's my Twitter account, our VPD cybercrime handle. Please follow us. We're always looking to broaden our horizons, and if any information that you want to share with us, if you have any information, please feel free to email me. And the next slide, I think, is my contact information. There we go. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you, Laura. I know you changed your personal plans to be here today for us, so really appreciate it. And
Not a worry.
we'll forward any questions that we might have to you for a later reply. Thank you. Have a good
Thanks,
evening.
Val. Thank you.
Okay, David, you're up next.
Good evening, everyone. I'll just open up my slide so you can see it. Okay, so I work with the VPD Criminal Intelligence Unit, and I've been there since 2017. I've been with the department for 10 years now, so sorry, 12 years now. It's gone by really quickly. And I grew up, was born and raised in the city. So our unit handles investigations that have to do with possible terrorism and violent extremism. Now, RCMP have the mandate to police terrorism, but it really requires all level of policing, whether it's municipal, provincial, or federal, to be really effective in combating terrorism and violent extremism. Just like all levels of government are responsible, municipal, provincial, and federal as well. So we'll handle investigations, we'll do some intelligence gathering. We really try to prevent stuff as well, get out ahead of something, and we'll do some training as well with the community. In terms of the investigations, it'll be dealing with calls of suspicious people, whether that's someone walking around a sensitive site and filming or taking pictures of it. It could be suspicious incidents, such as some kind of explosive has gone off close to a sensitive site. Usually it's nothing to be concerned about, but our unit will investigate that and make sure it's nothing to be concerned about. We deal with a lot of online social media, which was just explained to you. It is huge right now. Hate crimes, I think my supervisor is in direct contact with our hate crimes department on a either daily or weekly basis. And we also work a lot with the consulates that are in the city as well. So in the last couple of years, these are the amount of files that we really provide prolonged assistance on. So 158 files in 2020, and we're already up to 115 files. I think that COVID has really brought out a lot of conspiracy theorists and all sorts of hate as well. So it's affected so many things in policing, and especially our unit as well. So the next part of the lecture will kind of be broken up into these 3 different categories. I'll quickly go over what locally, what the current landscape is, what we're concerned about. And I'll talk about recent attacks in Canada. And I talk about those to highlight possible indicators that were missed. I'm not saying any of them could have prevented some of the attacks, but if we go over a little bit of background on the incidents, we can maybe find out what was possibly missed in some of these incidents. And then if we have time left, I'll talk about some safety and security tips as well. We find a lot of these incidents that we investigate could have been avoided just from some basic security precautions. So Canada's threat level is classified right now at a medium. It has been that way since late 2014. And that just means there is intelligence that indicates an individual or group within Canada or abroad has the intent and capability to commit an act of terrorism, and that this could happen. ITAC is the Integrated Terrorism Assessment Center, and that is a combination of the RCMP, CSIS, and the government that sets these guidelines. So in Canada right now, we have now gone up to 75 different organizations that have been listed by Public Safety Canada as a terrorist organization. These include groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and in the last few years, we've seen these far-right groups such as the Proud Boys, the Base, Blood and Honor, and being listed as well, neo-Nazi white supremacist organizations. And this gives police greater powers to investigate them in terms of fundraising and providing safety to and for these groups.
Or counter. Yeah. I think it's muted, right? Video's off. Oops.
So we found that in the past, the definition and terminology that we were using was not only inaccurate, it was a little bit offensive as well. I mean, there's no really such thing as, quote, Sikh extremism or Sunni extremism. We really have to break those definitions down to be more detailed and accurate of what we are talking about. So we're kind of going to these three main categories right now: ideologically motivated violent extremists, religiously motivated violent extremists, and politically motivated violent extremists. And I'll talk about the first one right now, ideologically motivated. So it's broken down to xenophobic violence, gender-driven violence, anti-authority violence, and our catch-all other. And this is really something that we're most concerned about in the city, is xenophobic violence. It's racially motivated violence based on an ethno-nationalist ideology and a fear of hatred of what is perceived as foreign, different, or strange, or immigration, anything that really challenges their own ideology. So neo-Nazis or white supremacy. Gender-driven violence is really based on a violent misogyny. It's anti-LGBTQ violence. The incel movement is involuntary celibate. It's kind of a young males, socially awkward, disenfranchised, really quite silly stuff, but they have the capability to be extremely violent. And we saw that in Toronto with the van attack, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we have anti-authority violence, which is really a rejection of the government and of the state, and they target those that are state actors, such as police. In 2014, there was this individual who shot and killed 3 RCMP officers. We don't see as much in Canada as we do in the United States, where they have armed militias, the sovereign citizens. They do stuff like make their own driver's licenses, make their own insurance papers. They reject any kind of government approach to their own lives. And the other grievance is some groups just don't act with the ideology linked to a specific organization. And they can be environmental, abortion rights. And we're going beyond just activism here. We're talking about acts of violence. The 5G cell phone towers, we've now had over 200 cell phone towers in Canada that have been vandalized because of 5G cell phone conspiracy theories. QAnon in the United States, that really culminated in the Capitol Hill riots on January 6th. And it's just, COVID has brought out so many different conspiracy theories amplified by social media. It's getting quite out of hand, but you see recently in the news, churches and religious institutions have been being burned, the Catholic churches. The fellow on the bottom right, he was a QAnon conspiracy theorist. In Canada, we've had oil pipelines that have been bombed. And the logo on the bottom left, there's actually eco-Nazis now, vegan Nazis and eco-fascists. And then the logo on the top left are the flat earthers, where they actually believe the earth is flat and that the Freemasons control the government, the media, and the economy. It's a really goofy stuff, but you'll remember a few months ago in North Vancouver, there was 2 Mason temples set on fire. And that was done by one of these individuals that believed in these conspiracies and believed in it enough to act and commit violence. And then we have religiously motivated violent extremism. An example of this would be ISIS and Al-Qaeda, pretty straightforward. Politically motivated violent extremism, we don't really see too much in Canada. This might be, an example of this would be the Irish Republican Army in Ireland, where they want to focus on elements of self-determination rather than concepts of ethnic or racial supremacy. So those definitions are fine, but what does it actually look like? What would it look like in the city or locally? So we call these lone wolf or lone actor attacks. It would usually just be one person. They commit a violent attack inspired by an ideology or in support of an ideology, really inspired by online social media propaganda, self-directed, so they're not being commanded or told to do anything by anyone, and a much smaller, unsophisticated attack, but can be quite deadly, which makes it challenging for police to uncover. We're not dealing with a whole network of people communicating back and forth. We're dealing with just one person who's likely been radicalized online, probably in their parents' basement. And it's difficult for us to detect what's happening unless we get some tips from the public. So since 2014, there's been 25 Canadians that have died. I would say that's a pretty significant number. But when you look at one of these events, it really has long-lasting scars on the society. I mean, the public doesn't expect the police to stop every bank robbery or even every gang shooting, but they certainly expect the police to stop a terrorist attack. So recent attacks in Canada, you'll see these faces, and if someone asks me, what does a terrorist look like? There's no answer to that. They all look different. Aaron Driver, he's the individual, I guess, second from the left at the top. He built his own homemade device and tried to detonate it in a city out east. Luckily, he was intercepted by police. The individual wearing the camo hat, that's Alexander Bissonnette. We'll talk about him in a moment. So really, we just have anyone can be one of these violent extremists. So in 2017, Bissonnette, he committed this awful attack at the mosque in Quebec City where he shot 6 people. And he was known by his friends to be a conspiracy theorist. He consumed huge amounts of online propaganda and violent videos. He was a supporter of Donald Trump's travel ban. He debated all these far-right policies with his friends and dad, and his friends knew that he was going to the shooting range to practice his shooting. I'm not saying if any of these events were reported to police, it could have stopped this, but it prevented us from a chance to stop this. And he also is believed to have scouted out this mosque before the attack. He was confronted and asked to leave, but unfortunately that didn't get reported to police. And again, it probably wouldn't have stopped this attack, but at least police could have maybe gone and talked to this guy and deterred him, hopefully in some other way. He was found guilty and sentenced to 40 years in jail. So these are kind of the incidents we're most concerned about. Just one individual who's watching huge amounts of online propaganda, has become radicalized to a certain ideology and is willing to commit violence. In Edmonton, there was another of these lone wolf attacks, just one individual who was a supporter of ISIS. He drove into a police officer, stabbed him a few times, and then he had a large U-Haul van parked close by, which a couple hours later, he tried to drive into downtown Edmonton, the equivalent to our Granville Street district. And luckily, he was stopped by police. He did hit and strike a few people, but luckily they've all lived. So again, like a lone person, radicalized, and without any communication of anyone else before he commits one of these events. And then in 2018, there was an incel supporter who drove his van through 16 different city blocks and killed 10 people. His social media was filled with posts about the incel ideology and wanting to commit violence. So again, if police had any indication this was going on, they may have made attempts to stop him. So we've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to go through just some really basic safety tips. But in some of the investigations that my unit deals with, we find that if just basic things are looked after, it helps us solve the case and is quite good. So it's really a challenge to make your place of worship both welcoming, but also include some basic security steps. It is a challenge, but I think if we can take a few things into account, it really helps us. Just let you read through that. So when an event happens, it's never just the event. There's always something ahead of time that gives indication of what might be happening. And if the public has some basic knowledge, they can act as eyes and ears. It really helps us prevent it, whether it be planning, recruitment, intelligence gathering, communication, and then finally execution of the attack. There's always what we call leakage, warning signs of what's about to happen. So for outside your building, installing CCTV is quite important. It doesn't have to be recording all the time. It can just be based on motion. Outside lighting, motion lighting is fantastic. These people don't want to be seen. And when a big spotlight goes off in their face, they get spooked and usually leave right away. And then other things like keeping trees and shrubs small, trimmed, neat and tidy, prevent hiding spots, remove any potential fire hazards such as an overflowing recycling bin or garbage bag. Make sure your doors are solid, can lock securely. And then inside as well, maybe look at a welcoming committee to watch people as they come inside, welcoming them, but also looking for anyone who doesn't quite fit in. We always say that you know your facility better than I do, better than anyone else, and you have the expertise to recognize just who seems out of place. An alarm system, whether it be a panic alarm, fire alarm, or a burglar alarm, cameras inside as well, and then always keep doors and windows closed when the building's not in use. So we talked about a welcoming committee and maybe a security committee as well. If you have professionals within your community that are in law enforcement or doctors, they're excellent for these types of committees, or anyone can be, anyone, absolutely anyone, but you can maybe rely on someone with law enforcement as well. And sometimes if you see someone suspicious, we'll say, just go and say hello. These people do not like to be spoken to, they do not like to be challenged, but the power of hello is very important. We call it the ONO approach, where you can observe someone, initiate a hello, navigate the risks, and obtain help if needed. So just breaking that down a little bit more. Be vigilant of your surroundings, initiate a hello, and then if you think they're suspicious, you can call police, and we'll always come. Yeah, so if you see something, please say something, and you can call us all the time. And with that, I believe my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for a great presentation. Sergeant Dr. Spicer, you're up next.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me tonight present on this very important topic. I'm presenting from Vancouver, which is on the unceded traditional and ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. I'd like to extend my thanks to the BC Muslim Association for organizing this, and I think this is a very important conversation that we can have on this important topic. Today, I'm here to speak to you about hate crimes, and I will share a presentation in a minute, but I wanted to be the first to let everyone know, and I'm putting it in the chat box, but there are a couple of recent releases that I'm not sure if people have, but there was a crowdsourcing survey that was done, and I'll just put it here for everyone. During the pandemic on hate crimes, and you can see that right there, I've put it in for you. And also StatsCan just released their numbers for 2020. And so I thought that would be of interest to everyone. So that's what I'm putting in the chat box for you this year. So there's always a 1 year lapse on the release of hate crimes, and we did do a very unusual thing as a police department to be releasing such contemporary type stats throughout of last year because of this very concerning trend that we were having around anti-East Asian crime, and that's kind of unusual because there's usually about a year lapse. So I'm just going to share my presentation. I think I'm one of the people right now who can't share because someone else might be sharing. But here we go. I've got my presentation. Let me just get it started here. All right.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
up.
I'll just get, yep, perfect. And then I'll just get that in presentation mode for everyone to see. And I'll start at the beginning because it's always good to start at the beginning. All right, so I'm in the diversity, inclusion, and Indigenous relations section. We have a few positions within the section, and one of which is the hate crime investigator, which is Gagan Ledoux, who is here tonight in attendance, and the inspector is Inspector Terry Young. So I'm glad to be here with them tonight. Tonight, what I'll do is I'll give you a brief statistical overview so that you have an understanding of what the situation is here in the city of Vancouver, describe the hate crime investigator role. I'll go into a bit what a hate crime is versus an incident so that we have like working definitions. I'll talk about the applicable criminal code of Canada sections, some of the legal challenges, and certainly what community can do to assist on this issue. And community is actually a very important aspect of combating hate, and specifically when it's targeting so many different communities within the city of Vancouver. So I'd like to start by saying that we don't have a lot of information on hate crimes. And what I mean by prevalence is how much is actually occurring. And I have no doubt that there is far more occurring than that is reporting to us. And that's a big concern. And what we can start with is, as a basis, is in 2014, they did a general social survey, which is a victimization survey, where they did ask questions about hate crime. And they did come up with about 300,000 incidents, which is a huge number if you think about it. And in that same year, there were only about 1,295 reported to police across Canada. So we see right here that there is a very big difference about what people are thinking is happening and what's actually reported to the police. There's many explanations for this, which I won't get into tonight, but some of which are as simple as people don't know that they might have been a target of a crime. They may not feel that the police can do very much, or they just move on. But as the previous presenter has mentioned, it's important to report absolutely everything that you even suspect might be related to hate, prejudice, or bias, because we are seeing that violence associated to hate. And this is very concerning, specifically around places of worship. So from a community perspective, anytime you can actually encourage community to make those reports, that would be greatly appreciated. Now, this is a very complex statistics, but we'll get through it. The dotted line is kind of a forecast. So if we continue at the rate that we are currently going, we will see a slight decrease from last year. The red bars are what's occurring in 2021. So you could see at the beginning of the year, I was actually quite concerned because we were seeing a higher amount of reported hate crimes than we were seeing in 2020. And I was like, oh my God, this is getting quite serious. And then you can see what happened during the pandemic. It's basically in April that we saw that very significant uptake. And if you follow that dark blue bar, that's how high it went. And by the end of the year, we had over about 280 hate crimes reported to us. So I'm thinking if we continue in our current trend, it will be about 250. Now, certainly anything can change that very, very quickly. So don't hold me to those numbers. There could be something that happens next week, which we could see a very serious uptake in hate crime. So we're always monitoring those numbers very, very closely. During the pandemic, I want to say we picked up on it quite early on. It was in early mid-March that we actually were seeing a very concerning trend. And as a police department, we came out reporting about it just at the beginning of April, which is far ahead of any other police department in the country. And you'll note from the statistics that have been released by the Statistic Canada is that there are parts of Canada that had higher increases than we did even see in British Columbia. So we in Vancouver had a 97% overall increase in our hate crimes, which means that we went from 142 incidents reported to us in 2019 to 280 in 2020. What was most concerning was this a very significant increase in East Asian, anti-East Asian hate crimes. And you've seen this number, which was 717%. And in raw numbers, that means we went from 12 such incidents in 2019 to 98. But what was even more concerning about that increase is that the violent trend. So typically, many of the hate incidents that we see aren't as violent related as they were during the pandemic. And so what we saw, 27 assaults in 2019, it went up to 74 in 2020. So that's certainly an extremely concerning trend. So of those 280 incidents, 198 were criminal code offenses. And I'll make the distinguishment between what a criminal code offense is and an incident in the next couple of slides. And for those 198 criminal code offenses, 41 cases did go to Crown Counsel with charges recommended, and 21 of those Crown Counsel reports were related to assault charges. And when we start looking at clearance rates, that is a fairly high clearance rate for those types of offenses. So we did well on clearing many of those cases to charge. Another thing we did during the pandemic is we enacted a hate crime project team. And there was a team commander that was overseeing, and the team commander has the ability to bring additional resources. And so this was created in May 2020. And we did a lot of different things as part of that project. We brought in a crime analyst who tracks linkages and persons of interest. So a smaller incident will be actually compared and contrast to other incidents to see if we have commonalities in those cases. We liaised with ECOM, which is the agency that receives 911 calls and dispatches to various police of jurisdiction, including Vancouver Police. And they enacted a policy that all calls that come into their center that has hate, prejudice, or bias actually be turned into a call for service. And that's not just for the Vancouver Police Department. They've done that for all of their client agencies. So we did have much more far-reaching impact on that part of things. And then we enacted internal report mechanisms where all these calls do get created into a general occurrence report, which is then reviewed by our hate crime investigator, and then we enhanced our interdepartmental processes for investigations, which means we liaise with Dave's team and other teams across the organization to ensure that when we needed further investigation on cases that our hate crime investigator needed assistance on, that there was other units that were engaged to put that case forward. And the Chinese Cultural Center is one of those cases that the property crime unit actually forwarded to Crown on our behalf, so that we would have that investigative support. And we created an internal video that was distributed to all of our members on hate crimes. Now, the hate crime investigator does review all related incidents and does investigative follow-up and liaises with the designated Crown and BC hate crime. And so we have safety planning for victims and victim care. And we also do a lot of community outreach and education. So we do have good contacts across many jurisdictions through our hate crime investigator. Now, just to get into the definitions, we've actually adopted a very broad definition of hate crimes that includes both criminal and non-criminal incidents. And these are all incidents that are reported to us that are motivated by hate, prejudice, or bias. Now, there is within the Criminal Code of Canada what's referred to as hate propaganda sections, and that's section 318 and 319 of the Criminal Code of Canada. And those are extremely rare instances. We also have mischief to religious properties and all of the associated buildings, including community centers. And that would be section 430 sub 401. And we have what's referred to as sentencing provisions, and I'll describe that a little bit more, which is section 718 sub 2. And that's at the discretion of the judiciary when they actually will apply that aggravating circumstances to an incident. And we also investigate all of these non-criminal incidents that could actually lead to much more serious situations. So we have these sections that I've referred to as the hate propaganda sections, which are section 318, extremely rare in Canada, very rarely applied. We have public incitement of hatred and willful promotion of hatred. And these are actually also extremely rare, and they're bounded by section 2B of the Charter of Rights. And there's a lot of case law around here, and it actually can be quite limiting in the prosecution of these cases. And certainly there is a call across Canada to have these particular section reviewed so that the police have further powers in this type of area that is very, very concerning. Crimes motivated by hate are different. These are things like assault or criminal harassment or mischief, where the motivation is expressed through acts, gestures, or words that occur either before, during, or after the incident that really determine the fact that we have a crime, like an assault, that's actually motivated by hate. At which time we have that sentencing provision that we can recommend to the judiciary to look at this particular aggravating circumstances at sentencing. And very difficult to track because this is usually occurring in the provincial courts, say for simple assaults. And so these are not written decisions. These are just decisions that apply at sentencing. Supreme Court decisions are in fact written, and so we can review those. And those are extremely rare, and so we don't see those very often. An identifiable group for reference is defined under section 318 sub 4, which is the advocating genocide section, and it's anyone distinguished by race, national or ethnic origin, language, color, religion, sex, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation or gender expression, identity or expression, or any other similar factors. So we look at all of the cases that fit this definition, and in fact, some cases that don't fit this definition, to ensure that we're not missing anything. Hate incidents, we investigate all of these, and these include non-criminal matters. So that could be a suspicious person, that could be a mental health apprehension, a neighbor dispute, all of these smaller incidents that we really want to look at carefully to see that there are no linkages, and also determine what the trends are within community and what kind of hateful incidents are occurring in society. So as I've mentioned, our charge approval standard is high for those hate propaganda sections. We do have to get Attorney General approval on search warrants, and so they're quite complex. And the offenders who are out there doing hate crime propaganda are very aware of the both the statutory defenses, but also previous cases and the what bounds the expression. And so they touch right at the boundaries of what is permitted. So those can be very difficult to prosecute. Online investigations, if you heard, or have their unique challenges and do cross borders. Other options are sometimes very effective, specifically human rights, and BC Human Rights is looking, at hate crimes right now. And it's a different set of standards. It's a civil standard, so it's a balance of probability as opposed beyond a reasonable doubt. So within BC Human Rights, we do have some good options. And so I'd encourage people to look at those options and advocate for those options. What can community do? Number one is be a good witness. That is the most important thing. Call 911 if it's happening and you want the police there right away. Encourage people to report if they are a victim or they're telling you about something important. Encourage them to report. Create those support mechanisms as you are doing right here tonight. Advocate for change. BC Human Rights right now is undergoing an inquiry into hate crimes. Help educate the public and bring clarity to the topic, because we aren't very clear on the topic. This is a very complex area of the law that exits the Criminal Code of Canada and enters into human rights. And so that overlap is quite unique. And so any kind of clarity that can be brought to the topic, such as forums like tonight, are extremely useful. And this ends my presentation, and I can certainly take questions and will remain online to do so.
Thank you, Val. Thanks very much for a great presentation. Last but not least is James Hooper. James, I work with James very closely in community policing, and James is one of the most responsive and committed NPOs, neighborhood policing officers we have. So over to you, James.
Thank you, Inspector Young. I'm so used to calling you Terry, but now I guess you've been promoted to Inspector. I have to call you Inspector Young. But and thank you to the Muslim Association for getting this presentation together. My presentation will be pretty brief. I'm just going to go through what community policing in Vancouver is all about and how we can be of assistance to you. So the VPD has 11 community policing centers, and they're located all over the city. They're kind of laid out geographically, and each CPC, you'll see a lot of, I'll be using a lot of abbreviations in this PowerPoint. I apologize for that in advance. But each community policing center has an assigned geographical location. And then each CPC has 1 or 2 neighborhood police officers assigned to it. There's a quick map of basically the city of Vancouver and how the CPCs are, so community policing centers are laid out. The map is in better clarity on our website if you wanted to zoom in on it and just see where you live or where you fit and which community police office is responsible for your area. Each CPC is managed by a volunteer board of directors. So in Vancouver, it's a unique scenario where the community police offices are not run by the Vancouver Police, with the exception of 2 of them. The other 9 are managed by a volunteer board of directors, and the board of directors are community members in the communities in which the CPCs serve. They each have a staff of 1 or 2 full-time employees, and then the rest of the employees there, or the rest of the people in the CPC, are volunteers from the community. They're responsible for doing neighborhood patrols, outreach events, neighborhood cleanups, graffiti removal, things like that. And there's a whole host of things. We register bikes to prevent thefts. We do educational sessions like this. We do all kinds of different things, but it's hard to put into one little quick PowerPoint. Some relevant CPC locations for the Muslim community. These are just 4 quick addresses that I'm aware of personally, because I've been to these 4 places. So the Marpole Masala is part of my personal, I'm a member of the Kerrisdale, Oak Ridge, and Marpole Community Policing Center. So that one, the Jamia Masjid in Kitsilano, that's the Kitsilano Fairview Community Policing Center. And then the—
You're not sharing.
Pardon me?
Your screen isn't sharing.
Oh, not?
Yes, you're on now.
Okay, sorry about that. Cops and technology. So here's the other four addresses I was mentioning. So the Collingwood Community Policing Center is responsible for a couple of the masjids. So if you have some specific concerns or you'd like to schedule a community police officer to come to your location and just do like a security walkthrough, or you have some concerns, contact your local community police office. And like I said, the addresses and the locations are on our map at vpd.ca. I'll put the link up in a minute. So the NPO, so the neighborhood police officer. So we're assigned to an area of the city and to a specific community policing center. We're a point of contact for community members, as are the staff in the community policing centers. So many community issues can be resolved at the CPC level. We're a resource. We can recommend other problem-solving options, like working with the City of Vancouver, or the Parks Board, or various other provincial agencies, health departments, social assistance programs, etc., depending on the nature of the issue. Not every issue that is brought to the police needs to result in an arrest of some kind or a criminal charge. We can also be problem solving, and we can be a liaison to other agencies. So if you're not sure how to solve an issue that you have, come to us, and then we can recommend some solutions, or we can track them down for you. CPTED inspections. So CPTED is crime prevention through environmental design, and Dave touched on a few of these pointers about trimming back trees, getting motion lighting, security cameras, things like that. Each site is obviously unique in its location in the city, the surrounding area. Is it a commercial area? Is it a residential area? Is there a lot of traffic? Is there a lot of street lights? So a CPTED inspection is a good one to do. I've done several in my area. I've worked a lot with Daniel and Bernard with the Jewish Federation, because just geographically, a lot of the Jewish institutions are in my area of responsibility. So I've gone and done CPTED inspections with Daniel at different synagogues, offices, buildings, and places like that. So crime prevention efforts. That's that's another one. It's a all-encompassing kind of issue where we're doing patrols. We're doing another one for us. We'll do community safety presentations like this one. I'm going to be quick tonight because I'm the last speaker, and I don't want to be that guy that prolongs the entire thing. But we do community safety presentations where we'll get into more details about things you can do, things to look for, and we'll actually we're that person that will come to your site and go through these things and present either on Zoom or in person. And like I said, we're a liaison to other VPD and City of Vancouver or governmental services and agencies. So if you're not sure how to solve something, come to us, and that's why we're here. So if you know it's a police issue and you don't know, you don't have a contact, you're not sure if you just call 911 or the non-emergency number, it's something that's not, ongoing at the moment, and you're not sure how to contact us, come to the community policing center, and we can provide you that contact. We assist in planning proactive police patrols. So this may be because of an increase in crime in a specific area. It may be because there's a religious holiday coming up and there's a large ceremony or a get-together or gathering planned. These are things that we kind of look for, and we'll plan proactive patrols in a community or around a building or a specific area in the city. Those proactive police patrols are not only by us, they could be by our volunteers, they could be by community safety officers, and they could be by just our patrol officers. So, and we also assist with reporting incidents and issues. So again, like you said, if you're not sure how to report something, if you saw something, maybe you have a video of something that happened a few days ago that, and you thought it was odd, maybe you took some video, you maybe took a picture of it, or maybe you just remember that and you want to report it to someone and you're not sure how to go about doing that, come to the CPC, the Community Policing Center, and we'll assist you with getting that reported. It's very important to report things like this. because we, like I said, when we were designing patrols, if we don't have any idea that something's happening in a certain area, we may be, sending patrols elsewhere. So reporting to the VPD, I think everybody knows 911 is for emergencies. If something's happening or it's just happened, or you think it's about to happen, 911 is for sure the number to call. Non-emergency, if you were to report something, so you've showed up at a building or a mosque and there's some graffiti on it that you don't know when it's happened or something like that, that would be the non-emergency number to report that. Online reporting, some issues can be reported online. Thefts, some thefts under 5,000, some mischief, vandalisms can be reported online. And then your community office as well. So we can take reports. We can walk you through making an online report or a phone report to the non-emergency. And sometimes the neighborhood officer, if we're in the office, we can actually take that report as well. So, and reporting crimes, like I know sometimes you think, well, graffiti, well, I don't want to, I don't want to go on the non-emergency number for 30 minutes or something and wait, because sometimes the wait is long because it is a busy city. Vandalism, maybe a break-in, you think, well, why should I report it? It's probably not going to get solved anyways. But like I said, it does help us design our patrols. We design our patrols based on, where's the most likelihood that we're going to be able to prevent crime or arrest an offender doing crime. So if we don't have these reports, then we don't know where to send our officers. So it's very important to get these things reported. Suspicious activity, again, it's, if you've got suspicious activity and you're not sure if you should report it to the CPC, and one of us will give you a call back. Some other resources that we have, our community police offices often sponsor women's personal safety team workshops. These are for women only, and they're very, very well received. Before COVID, they were doing actually in-person workshops. And then during COVID now they've got them online. So it's a great resource for women. And it's not only just, it's not like just a self-defense workshop, but it's a workshop about how to spot threats, how to be safe, how to minimize the chances that you'll be the victim of something. So it's a great workshop, and our community policing centers can sponsor those, but those can be found on the VPD website as well. Active deadly threat training. There's a video that we've produced on the VPD website, and that's a video that we share with different communities and the city in general. It's basically designed for an office environment. It's for like an active shooter scenario. It's a training video that we use to kind of minimize the risks to people if one of these incidents should happen. Lockdown drills, it's another one. We do these a lot. Our school liaison officers, we're doing these in the schools in the city. And like I said, myself and Daniel have done these at some of the institutions in the Jewish community, at the synagogues and the office, Jewish Community Center, things like that. So that's another one. You come up with a drill at some of your institutions as well, and your neighborhood police officer can assist with that. This is my contact information. This is, like I said, I am the neighborhood officer for Caristell, Oakridge, and Marpole. It's basically the southwest corner of the city. So every corner of Vancouver and most of the other like Burnaby, Surrey, Richmond, North Van, they all have community policing sections, and they'll have community officers. So they're set up similar to us. No matter where you are in the Lower Mainland, you should have a neighborhood police officer who's a liaison between you, the community, and the police department. So this is my contact information, and I'm more than happy to provide you with contact information for the other CPCs. And again, it's all on the VPD website. That'll finish up.
Thank you very much. Terry.
Thanks very much, James. And so we actually finished a little bit ahead of time. So thank you very much for everybody who taking the time tonight. We can have additional trainings as we need them. And any questions, please send it to Reed or myself. And we don't have the answer. We'll certainly get the answers for you. Thanks very much.
Thank you. And just some final comments from the BCMA, if you don't mind, just 2 minutes, Yusuf, please.
Absolutely.
Sure. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. I want to start by sharing my sincere gratitude to our First Nations people on whose land I, as an uninvited settler, live. I thank the Musqueam people for their ancestral care of the land and their commitment to passing along a better world to future generations for all people who live on it. There was so much rich and detailed information shared today by our speakers. Our community is under threat, and the learnings from today are part of our commitment to the safety and security of our friends, families, masjids, and greater community. I want to thank our speakers today for their time, their knowledge, and their support. Thank you to Deputy Chief Howard Cho for your words and joining us today. Inspector Terry Young, who initiated and organized this event. Thank you. Tarek Tayeb, my friend who convened our Muslim community, the BCMA, Bernard Pinsky and Daniel Haderich from the Jewish Federation, Constable Laura Duzmovic, Constable David Gooderham, Sergeant Val Spicer, and Constable James Hooper. Thank you so much for your time and your knowledge. We'll share all your contact information so that anyone who needs to get in touch with you for these matters can do so. I also wish to extend my thanks and appreciation to the Muslim leaders on this call for your support. We will be following up via email with a survey for you to share your thoughts on this program and info on how you can receive your workshop certificate of completion as well. We'll also be sharing a video message from Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan, who unfortunately was pulled away at the last minute and was unable to join with us tonight. For questions that you may have, please either email media@thebcma.com or assist_secretary@thebcma.com. Your questions, email your questions and who you're directing it to, and we can connect you. Both those emails are posted in the chat, and I'll just repost them in a moment for your convenience. So thank you very much, brothers, sisters, friends, for joining us today. I'll leave you with one final ask. Please share what you learned today with your organizations, communities, masjids, friends, and families. We are all responsible for the well-being of one another. Jazakallahu khairan, and have a beautiful night.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Val, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I see Aaliyah has her hand up. I don't know who the question is directed to, but maybe we can see if she wants to ask her question.
I think right now, just from Terry's instructions, that we get the questions in writing and then we share it with
Okay, yep, that's perfect. Yep, and if you need any more information, like just a one-pager on what I presented on, and you want to share that with people, I can certainly do that with some links and stuff like that.
Yeah, please do email us any resources, and then we'll share it widely within our Muslim communities across the Lower Mainland.
Okay, great. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Val.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.